Welcome to another episode of the Collision Vision, driven by Auto Body News. My name is Cole Stramberg, and I'm your host. Today's episode represents the last in our MSO Chronicles series, so we're ending it with a bang. We've had many great MSOs represented here on the show, from the small up-and-comers to some well-established juggernauts and everything in between. I think it's fitting, though, that we end this series with the biggest of the MSOs. Today's guest is Todd Dillender, COO of Caliber Collision. Caliber obviously needs no introduction, but today we're going to talk about their growth, Todd's take on the importance of culture, the future of Caliber and the industry as a whole, and much more. Stay tuned at the end of the show for a sneak peek of our next series, and in the meantime, enjoy this insightful episode with Caliber COO Todd Dillender. This episode is sponsored by Hunter Engineering. At Hunter Engineering, the theme behind all their products is do it right, do it once. So when you're doing alignments, the time to find hidden damage is before you start, not after. The workflow for Hunter's collision alignment system surfaces the trouble right up front by providing 5 additional collision-specific measurements, like toe out on turn, maximum steer, and ride height, to find the problems right away. It's all about efficiency, so find the damage before it finds you. To learn more about Hunter's collision alignment system, visit hunter.com. Enjoy the show. Todd Dillender, thank you for joining me on the Collision Vision.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to a great conversation. I want to dive right in and learn a little bit more about you and your background. So if you would, tell us your story in your own words.
Sure, you bet. Thanks, Cole. So actually started in the business back in 92, sweeping floors and washing cars. I was a car guy at heart, had always been. And so when I got the opportunity to work in a collision shop, I jumped for it. So it was a shop, independent shop, Automotive International, here in down in Southern California. And really spent the next 14 years at that one shop, really learning the business. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of guys and gals around me that took the time to pour into me, kind of teach me the business. I learned very quickly what I liked. I learned very quickly what I was not good enough to make a living at, which would be, being an auto body technician and in paint. But just have a really true respect for the artisan kind of nature of both of those jobs. Went through and got pulled up into the office, like a lot of folks that I talked to story, and a need arose in there. So jumped in and really started working through parts, obviously service advising, and ultimately into the general manager of that store. At some point in there, Caliber Collision came in and acquired the store, and so became a Caliber teammate. I believe it was in 1998, and just enjoyed the journey from there. In about 2006, grabbed my family and we left Southern California to move to Texas. And in Texas, was fortunate enough to land in a couple of shops here locally in the DFW area. Ran a couple of shops, really got to know the team and the people in the area, and just slowly started continuing to work my way through the organization into a regional manager role, and then ultimately one of the third vice presidents in the organization back at the time. So I think this is back when, Caliber had 60-ish stores. The store I was at was actually store number 9. And today we have well over 1,700 stores. So been with Caliber for some time, again, through that acquisition, and really been loving it. Just continued my journey. Was able to work with the team in Houston. That was my first kind of venture outside of kind of my base or home market. And then I just continued to move from there. Back in, was it late 1819, we went through the merger with Abra. So that was obviously a big deal, a lot of work to do. Was able to start to work with some really great leaders in that organization. And then Paul Krause, Mitch McMaster, and I became the 3 EVPs of the organization, reporting directly up to Mark Sanders, the CEO and COO at the time. And back in, I guess, it's February of 2023, I got the call that they had done some thinking and they wanted to move me up to the chief operating officer of the organization. So was certainly humbled when you think about the journey and kind of where I've started. Maybe not like a lot of COOs out in the world, but it was very humbling, and what a great opportunity for me personally. You'll probably pick up as we go through this. I've got my heart still in the center with the center level teammates and what they do every day. Now look at this as it's my chance to really support them maybe in a way that we haven't in the past. So it's been a fun ride. Just really love the team that we work with, and it's been something, but just over 32 years now.
Man, you're not kidding. What a ride. And congratulations on that relatively recent promotion to the C-suite. Very exciting. And you're absolutely right. I do want to talk about how your experience, and a lot of it at the shop level, has impacted you and your mindset and your leadership skills in the position you're in now of COO. So talk to me specifically. Are there any ways that you can think of that much time in center level positions have shaped your approach to leadership now at the executive level?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cole. So I would say perspective is the main thing. I have a unique perspective or understanding of kind of what goes on in these centers each day, having, walked in their shoes for some time. And look, at the end of the day, that's where I stay grounded. If I wake up every day focused on, making the jobs easier for the teammates in the centers, specifically for the technicians, that's, I've had a good day if I'm able to impact that. But it's certainly when I'm grounded in, which is, wonderful that Caliber's given me this opportunity, because it's, they know that's near and dear to me, and they've been a huge support for me even in this first year, and just allowing me to really do some unique things for the center level teammates.
Fantastic. And I know certainly in your long and winding and moving up type career, just like with many business owners I speak with here on the Collision Vision, there's going to be ups and downs and moments that you look back on and say, that was a game changer. So were there any kind of key milestones or challenges or pivotal moments in your career that you look back on and say, wow, that was lucky, or wow, I'm happy that happened, or I took advantage of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of those, which means I think I was making a lot of my fair amount of mistakes along the way. One story sticks out. I was a young general manager actually at the shop there in Southern California. Still a very dear friend of mine who was a technician at the time. One of those moments, you're a young GM and you're in a hurry and you're moving around, and it came down to something as simple as replacing the car liner bolts for the clamps. And I'll never forget it. He'd ask, and I'd say, you know what, I got you. I'm on it. I'll get it for you. And week went by, another week went by. He pulled me aside and he sat down, cared enough to sit down and have a chat with me, and said, look, Todd, if there's one thing you've got to figure out as a leader in any business, you got to do what you say you're going to do, and you got to do it when you say you're going to do it. And it was that moment, I was in my, I guess, mid-20s at the time, that it just hit home. And it's a story that I've told a lot of the Caliber teammates. They've heard me talk about that moment, but it was a pivotal moment in how I looked at the business, how I looked at being a leader, even at that young age. And since then, I've just been a student. And again, thank goodness I've had a lot of folks that have cared enough to take the time to pour into me and keep me on the right track.
Fantastic. And I want to now pivot. We've established your career. I love your story. I love your journey. I think it paints a really good perspective of what I want to talk about next, which is the Caliber organization, its growth, and where it is today. So famously, Caliber has been in some MBA coursework on their growth, obviously the biggest company of its kind in the collision repair industry. And I want to set the stage, nation's largest collision repair provider, over 1,700 locations in 41 states. You've expanded into other automotive services with Caliber Auto Glass and Caliber Fleet Solutions. And the organization is still growing, from your estimation, being there from a very early period in the company's trajectory. How have we gotten here?
Boy, I don't think we have enough time, Cole, if I'm being honest. But I thought about this. So it really comes down to a pivotal point in 2009 when Steve Grimshaw joined Caliber. And I want to go there because look, at the time, again, we were 68 stores. We had a good M&A team. We were out in the market looking to acquire shops. We had started tinkering with this idea of building out greenfields. Certainly had done our fair share of brownfields along the way. But it was, Steve challenged us and said, look, guys, so, I wasn't in the room. I happened to be in this time. I think it was a director at the time. But I hear this story quite a bit where Steve said, guys, what do we wake up every day to go do? Like, what's the most important to us? And I can envision the conversation. It's like, look, we deliver safe quality repairs. We deliver great customer service. We believe we have great partnerships with the insurance partners. And, overall, we think we do a good job. And Steve just continued to probe and challenge. And really, it's when we landed on Caliber's purpose, which is restoring the rhythm of your life, the things started to shift, right? You can build shops, acquire shops, and go through that. And again, we have a machine that handles that. But the power of having everyone from leadership down through the organization aligned on one purpose, frankly, it was a bit surprising to me. If I'm being honest, when that all was starting, I was, again, not in the room. I'm thinking, well, here we go. There's another, kind of poster on the wall, another poster that says, here's what we do, or here's what we're about. But it was about 6 months or so after that it really started to hit me. And I said, something is shifting, something is different. And as the business continued to grow, as we were growing with a laser focus on restoring the rhythm of your life, and so Cole, it's not just about the customer, right? It's about our insurance partner. It's about our vendor partners. It's certainly, and probably most importantly, about our teammates. And so as we make that shift and you start focusing on making sure that those folks have everything that they need and you're supportive to make sure you're restoring them to their lives, it just exploded. I mean, it was like lightning in a bottle, and we just continued to grow and, find new areas, find new markets to grow in. We're able to really acquire some great, fantastic leaders to help really catapult Caliber through this growth. And I like to say, look, we've always had the discipline to make sure we're not kind of outgrowing our ability to perform. And, like any organization that's growing, we have our bumps and bruises along the way. But at the end of the day, the growth, it's one of those things. It was like a freight train. I'm not sure we could have stopped it if we wanted to, because when you're focused on your teammates' development, you want to make sure you have what's that next step for them. Well, if it's a GM and you want to make sure they have an opportunity to be a regional, you've got to add some stores, right? You've got to create those opportunities. And when that was the focus versus a bunch of buildings, Cole just completely changed the game for us. And you can see the result now. Look, we're not perfect. We have our bumps and bruises, and, we struggle and, really have to work through it. But at the end of the day, with that true north changing, I mean, that is the one thing that was a catalyst for all of it.
That freight train analogy is an interesting one, and it's one I want to spend a little bit of time on down the road in our conversation a little bit. Before I do, I'd be remiss not to point out, the people conversation, the mission conversation seems to be a recurring theme in what you're talking about. And I had the privilege of attending at least one Caliber Executive Council meeting a few years ago as a vendor in a past life. You can tell that culture is a very important piece, whether it's rewarding teammates, whether it's the activities, the chants, the things of that nature. It seems that that's an important piece of the Caliber puzzle. From your perspective, has that been intentional from day one? Was there a period of time that you've seen this really ramp up? How is it keeping the pedal down on building a strong culture?
So it's interesting. There's, the word culture, everybody likes to kind of talk about that. And it's incredibly important. But, my role, I may be able to, kind of set the stage, or here's what I would like the culture to be at the organization. Here is our purpose. but it's not until you get some kind of credibility in making the decisions that are really aligned with that purpose, and your actions start to follow the poster on the wall, that it really begins to shift. And then after that, the culture is driven from the teammates, right? I can get up and we can talk about, our culture and what we want it to be and what we believe it is. But at the end of the day, it's those four walls and the communities of each of these centers. That's where our culture exists. And it's up to those teammates. So my role is to support them, give them the tools they need, certainly make sure that as a business, we're making our decisions based on our purposes, our true north, and then our values, right beneath that. As long as I'm doing that and showing that and then supporting them, that's where the culture is at. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things we do in our communities. That we just finished our 2024 Restoring You food drive. And we just provided 5 million meals to all the food banks in our communities. And look, although we'll provide the support and maybe some ideas and thoughts, that whole food drive concept started with 2 stores in Colorado that really wanted to get engaged in their communities. That's the culture in those 4 walls. They wanted to reach out. They wanted to do that. Then it becomes this phenomenon in our organization. It's probably the thing our teammates look forward to the most each year, right? As being a part of that. But again, that wasn't a top down, hey, we're going to support this food drive and everybody has to do these things. This is like, look, this is the right thing to do. We need to make sure that in the summer months, as it started with, we need to make sure the kiddos that don't have a steady meal after being out of school, that they have that. And again, that was started by 2 teammates. And then here we are. But that's,
Wow.
again, back to your question, the culture. I mean, it's interesting what we may say up here, but it's those 4 walls.
Sure. That's awesome. Great example there. Taking a time machine back to before Caliber is what it is today, before there's really any other MSOs out there with relative scale that we're seeing today elsewhere, I would think detractors who would tell us what Caliber's done is not possible would say it's not possible for 2 reasons. And number one, I think is talent. And I want to address that a little bit down the road in our conversation. Number 2 is, from a scale perspective, that quality control, that McDonald's example of getting the same hamburger in Miami as you get in Dubai, as you get in wherever, really tough, one would think, to replicate in the collision repair world. How do you view kind of ensuring that consistency and quality across such a big network of locations?
Yeah, thanks, Cole. So it's I'd say that's a journey we're still on. But because I think when you're at this scale, there's really good nuggets and things to learn from different parts of the country that we need to make sure and kind of leave a little creativity, if you will, for these folks to get in and be creative. That's how we're driving the business forward, and that's how we'll all get better. But from a quality standpoint, this was not necessarily early on, but about maybe midway through our journey here. We launched from a quality perspective, our quality technical coaches. And this is a tough one to commit to, because we've essentially taken, over 50 technicians, at least at its state today, out of the field. And the goal is, to put a second set of eyes across the country on the quality of repairs, especially on those most complex repairs that we do in the shops. But it was also kind of that lifeline. If you think about in the office, if you're a service advisor, you have a number of folks. You can call your insurance contact, maybe to get some coaching or information or support. We'll always, build from an infrastructure standpoint, support for those administrative jobs. But when it came to the technicians, with this, increasing complexity and this ever-changing kind of world they're living in, we felt like we were, leaving them out, and we owed them that level of support as well. Because again, as fast as things are moving, to expect these technicians to have every answer on every car just wasn't realistic. I mean, these are young men and women that are amazing at their jobs, but as quickly as things are changing, we needed to provide that support. So it's twofold. It really helps give them that kind of lifeline to ask questions and maybe get some support where they need it, and then, or just even a ear to bounce some repairs off of. And then you also have the coaching and development side of it.
Fantastic. And I want to kind of dive into that second piece, or really number one, on the challenges of scaling a collision repair organization, and that's talent. And one specific initiative that Caliber's doing that I'd want to bring up is your Technician Apprentice Program, or the TAP program. You hear a fair bit about that across the industry. Can you talk to us about what that is and what impact it's had on your organization?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, Cole. I will say from the development and training side, you do have to start with your leaders, right? I mean, if we can have programs that I'll explain like TAP, but having your leaders constantly developing and working to improve themselves really just sets them up to be really successful in their roles as we move through some of these new initiatives. So jumping over to the TAP program. So TAP is our Technician Apprentice Program. Um, Nothing new, right? We've always heard of apprentice programs throughout the industry, for years, whether it was just a helper working with one of the body techs or a number of other type of programs. But none of those were really answering, the need for the industry and for Caliber. So we, decided, instead of, like we tend to do, get in a room and, maybe come up with a book about this thick on how to create a TAP or a technician apprentice program. We decided to go talk to the techs, and we went and spoke to a lot of our lead technicians across the country, and really just started talking to them about the business needs and how they could play a part, and really give them, kind of empower them to help us with the program. So I think that was our first, good decision, just to take out a lot of the, I'll just say, kind of corporate barriers that we may put up, and let's just go and talk to the teammates. And what we found is the technicians, in most cases, many of our mentors, we have over 1,700 now. They love doing this. They really, love the idea of being able to kind of pass down this trade that at one point somebody taught them. So giving them that opportunity without all of the, I guess, the roadblocks, really opened up the door for a lot of these technicians to take on these apprentices. And so essentially, instead of a program that's time based, and you have all these, books you need to solve or go through and all this different training, we said, look, there are 13 competencies that a technician needs to start their journey as a tech. It takes years to master being an auto body technician. So by no means are we saying this is to mastery, but it gets them to a point where they can stand on their own, really create that opportunity for them personally. I mean, this is changing their life, their family's lives, kind of providing this career, but it's focused on the competencies. And what you'll see is some apprentices can get through the competencies, rather quickly. Some take longer, and we're like, that's okay. We just want to make sure that by the time they graduate, they're able to go in, stand on their own, and produce. Maybe not quite as efficient as, again, some of the master techs, but they do a fantastic job, and you'd be really impressed if you saw the quality of work that's coming out of these young men and women. I mean, it is really, really exciting to see. But so today, as an example, Cole, we have 1,600 graduates at Caliber today. So these are technicians that have been, apprentices that were in the program for anywhere from 12 to 18 months that have graduated. And those that have graduated, a year or two ago are really hitting their stride. So it's super fun to kind of watch that. So you have that cohort of 1,600 that are on their journey to become a master technician. And today, currently, we have just under 2,000 being trained. So when you think about that size of
Wow.
program, that's in an industry that needs over 100,000 technicians, here in the next 5-6 years. We're still just kind of scratching the surface, but we feel it's incredibly important to have those technicians available for tomorrow. And again, what is, I won't say surprising, but what I've really enjoyed watching is the mentors' reaction to this program. I mean, you have these technicians that have been doing this for 30 plus years, getting a new spark that you wouldn't have guessed they had in them. And it's been really just fantastic to watch, and the feedback that we get, again, from those mentors. Again, it goes back to our purpose, right? Restoring lives. Those mentors really understand that, right? They're giving this apprentice basically an opportunity to have a completely different life depending on where they're starting from. So really exciting stuff.
It's a great program from all I hear. Now, talk to me a little bit on the Collision Vision. We talk a lot about the technician shortage, as you might imagine, and we kind of typically break it down into two tranches on how to address it. One's the macro, it's the industry, it's organizations like iCar and CREF and many, many others, the trade school world. And the other is the macro, the micro rather, which is the shops themselves. And obviously, Caliber is taking a real step and making a big investment into doing that. Other groups are also. From a talent pool perspective, can you paint a picture on where some of these TAP apprentices are coming from?
Sure. So look, it's the gamut, right? We at first we had a lot of friends and family and friends, right, that were joining, and they would come from really all walks. My son is getting ready when he's just almost old enough to jump in. He couldn't be more excited, right, to jump into this
Cool.
program. Yeah, he loves it. He's a car guy like myself, so he comes by naturally. But like it started there, and now you'll see, we're partnering with a lot of high schools across the country, certainly technical schools that are out there. We love bringing those folks in. Changing lanes is a really important piece in a segment of our TAP. So changing lanes is where we help, men and women of the military that are, getting to the end of their time there, looking to transition to civilian life. We're able to bring them into a changing lanes program. That's, before they get into a center with a mentor. We have, dedicated centers that they go to really learn the business and make sure it's something that they're interested in, and they come out of that ready to jump in with a mentor. And some, frankly, depending on what their time was, during the military, can jump out and jump right into being a technician. So it's a couple of different paths, but you have, again, high schools, you have our changing lanes program, you'll have, technical schools, and then just word of mouth. I would tell you our bottleneck is less about the apprentices, and it's more about getting mentors signed up to jump in and do this, because it's not easy. I mean, for those mentors, taking on a new technician, really from scratch, they don't all have, they haven't been around cars their entire lives and those things. So there's some that are very much from scratch, and they're taking these young men and women on and teaching them a career. So, I mean, my hat goes off to them. Any chance I get, I go speak to them and thank them, because it is not easy. I
Sure.
imagine, I'll say frustrating, but at the beginning, right? Yeah, it's like you're down to, this is the paint shop, this is the body shop. So it's not easy. And I said it takes a lot of patience and the right person to be able to do it. But again, we have 1,700 and growing, and just love what these men and women are doing.
Awesome. Well, this may or may not be a part of the curriculum for the TAP program, but I'm sure it's addressed somewhere in the Caliber organization. Talk to me about uh, a training program or a training guideline for technicians on EVs, obviously another hot topic in the
Yeah.
world of collision repair.
Oh yeah. So EVs is a clearly a big topic. I would say we also, before I jump into the training, our first kind of order of business was to make sure that the existing stores and teammates in the stores can work safely around them. As you know, a lot of these EVs, outside of Tesla, they kind of look like your traditional car. So we spent a lot of time training the entire organization to make sure they're operating safely around them. They're able to identify. They have a small subset of tools that will help them identify that they are BEV, and then make sure that they have they can at least initially diagnose maybe what's going on with the vehicle to determine kind of what the next step is. And at that point, they would transfer that car to one of our BEV hubs that we have across the country that are set up for more of the complex repairs around those. Besides the, just kind of how we're operating within it, as far as a training program, today, we're using the iCar training. We have some internal training, but really we're relying on the iCar, relying on some of the OEs to really help us with this training, because a lot of this doesn't exist. But again, it was first, it's like we have to, most importantly, these cars are in your stores today. You have to be able to identify those cars so the teammates are safe around them. But that would be
Absolutely.
priority one.
Absolutely. Yeah, the safety concerns and oftentimes early on, especially for me, what you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, I should
That's right.
say. So many
Right.
different complexities around that. So
Right.
makes total sense. And I don't think that is slowing down as a component
Well,
of collision repair.
well,
I think that's only speeding up.
that's
Something
true.
in our pre-show call that I know was very important to you and your team to bring up were two things. It was community engagement, which I think we've touched on to an extent already, and sustainability. And so I want to dive in on sustainability. Talk to me about some sustainability initiatives Caliber's implemented, and how do you feel they impact the organization as a whole?
Yeah. So first off, we just released our first sustainability report here recently. I think it's over on caliber.com. But I think there's a couple of things, So one of the things that we did a couple of years ago, Mark Sanders took the lead and said, "Look, I want to get vacuum systems in every single one of our centers." So from a hazardous waste disposal standpoint, they are a game changer. But probably more importantly, they make a huge difference in the health of our technicians. So you talk to a tech that has a vacuum system compared to kind of what they've done their entire life, and at first it's a little cumbersome to use, but at the end of the day, the health benefits are enormous. And again, it's across every store, and it's been a big help from a hazardous waste perspective. Changing all the lighting, so we went through a process, and all of our shops are LED lit. So from a power consumption standpoint, we're doing a good job making sure we're being mindful of that. Uh, and then look, we partner with Safety Clean. GMG is our safety company that does our safety walks for us each month. And just I would say overall, just an overall focus on making sure from a hazardous waste disposal standpoint, making sure we create a safe environment for our technicians and teammates, and then making sure we're being transparent on all the different things that we're doing with vendor partners, paint, all those things we do to make sure Caliber's doing their part, is out there in that sustainability report.
For as much as we talk about the business side of the collision repair industry and profitability and growth and all that stuff, at the end of the day, the two most important things of what we do in our industry in no order are the safety of the customer and getting them a safely repaired, properly repaired vehicle, and then the safety of the team, the people repairing that. There are so many issues out there of old, and we look back on some of those things and picture painters of the 80s and 90s and before, and how they were going about health,
Yeah.
and we just view that in a way that's like, oh man, I can't believe we were doing that. So to see that focus today, with your organizations, with others, so important and very cool. I know we talked about some examples of community engagement. There's some examples right there of some of the sustainability initiatives. Any other kind of brags you'd like to give on behalf of your team, either from a sustainability perspective or a community involvement perspective?
I would say, a lot of the organization, the industry does a great job with recycled rides. So that's something I'm real proud of. I think we've given away over 500, cars to men and women, first responders over the years. So love that program, and that's something we'll continue to lean in on. We talked about our food drive. We do a lot with the American Heart Association as well. But there's so many other smaller community kind of engagements and movements that happen throughout the country that frankly I don't even always know about. I'll pick up and I'll see where a center went and volunteered at a food bank, for a weekend on their own time. Right? There's so many different stories, like that just show kind of how our team, really focuses in our communities. One of the things, I'll give a good example because it's kind of recent, and for those that may have been impacted by the hurricanes, and in Houston recently, heart goes out to you. It was that was a bad deal down there. But what's really cool, I love it. Our facilities team, and this isn't the first time they've done this. When these type of storms and these type of events happen, they're the first responders, right? For Caliber, they're the first ones. They're driving into the storm and so on. But their number one priority is not the business. They go and we identify teammates that may be displaced from their homes, had flood damage, have any kind of damage in their homes, they'll deploy over the weekends to those, teammates' homes, get them set, try and get it to where they can, get back into their home if they've been displaced, or help find them different solutions. So they're going in, and then look, as that gets settled down, they'll go in and look at the business. Okay, what's happened? What needs to be taken care of at each shop. But it's like first priority. Incident happens in the community where we have teammates. Everybody's dropping in to help the teammates. Even in front of the potential business needs. So that's something. Just a shout out to our facilities team. These guys and gals are incredible.
Oh, powerful. That's awesome. And going back to the charitable piece as well, certainly Caliber and many of the other large organizations leading the way, but a cool side effect, I think, of the Collision Vision and talking with the gamut of body shop organization leaders, from single stores to regional MSOs to the national guys and the Calibers of the world. It's very cool to see this, and maybe it's just that there's more of an openness and a sharing within the industry, but so many people are contributing to some really positive things in their local community from a national perspective. Really, really cool, and appreciate what you and your team are doing to lead the way on that at a very high level. I want to pivot back to. I want to pivot. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just say I love that. Like I look at whether it's LinkedIn or what, and yes, we're all healthy competitors, but to your point, you don't see the level of this kind of community involvement and support in every industry. And I do think that's something special. They may think we're just a bunch of body shop guys out here, but these teammates really do care, and we do want to be a good part of each community. And it's not just Caliber. To your point, you see it across the industry, and I just love it.
It's awesome. And you're right. It is not the case in every industry. But you think about, over my career in collision repair, the number of unsavory characters I can probably count on one hand. Like the vast majority of this industry is just good people trying to do right by their people and by their customers. And I think it's a really cool industry to be a part of. And it's why it is so sticky. You don't see too many people, at least kind of after getting settled in, leaving this industry. And I think the culture around what we do is uniquely strong. Speaking of culture, I want to talk a little bit more about kind of leadership within the Caliber organization. So many times when I talk to companies in the space, specifically in that like regional and growing MSO category, I talk of the importance of creating a foundation for your business that makes it not reliant on any one person. And Caliber, over its years of evolution and growth, has obviously had its share of leadership changes and evolution over the year. You mentioned Steve Grimshaw, you mentioned Mark Sanders.
Yeah.
Where do you think Caliber as an organization kind of hit that stride to, and maybe there's more changes internally that we don't see, but from outside, it's like, hey, wow, you lost a great leader, and leadership just keeps pushing forward and proving itself to be a great team as well. Kind of where did that happen?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a couple of ways to answer that. I do believe it. We did some really key acquisitions where we brought some very powerful industry leadership to Caliber, right? And I'd go through the names, but I don't want to accidentally forget anybody. But that was, for me, that was the beginning of it. These are men and women that knew the business, knew the industry, but also knew the value in developing leaders. And that was, really where it started. And then as Steve came to the organization with Mark's support, it really just, became part of, kind of what we do from a leadership development standpoint. So, like lots of, training classes, lots of things that are, specific or internal at Caliber that frankly are very much more focused on like you as a person versus necessarily a collision operator, collision leader. But we know that, kind of who we are, kind of bleeds over into kind of who we are as leaders. So Caliber spent a lot of time, and we still do today, focused on just personal development for our leaders, just up and down the organization. And I believe that is what really just, it keeps us all growing ourselves on kind of our own personal leadership journey. But all of us together, it becomes very powerful. And to your point, look, there's a handful of leaders today that when it's my turn to sail off, I have full confidence in the leadership team that's coming up and working with me today, and then them for their markets. I mean, it really is a very deep pool of leaders here that I believe is, it was intentional, as you said. Like, this wasn't just something that just kind of happened. We had the right leadership at the right point in time that said, this is important. This is important to who we want to become as an organization, and we're going to invest in it. And it's for us, it's now we just got to keep it going, because to your point, it's working.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't happen by accident. So you're absolutely right. Somewhere along the line, it was realized this is going to be bigger than any one person, and to set that foundation is so important. Now, not to give you too much of a compliment here and make you blush on camera for those watching on YouTube, but man, looking at your career trajectory, you obviously are doing and have done a lot of things right. Looking within, and for people kind of listening, paint the picture of what do you view as your personal, kind of call it, leadership strengths and your leadership principles as you approach this COO role.
Yeah, that's a great question, Cole. You are gonna get me here. So I would say number one, it's being true to kind of who you are. I think that's certainly key for me. I had a lot of people, leaders that didn't really know they were leading me during my entire career. As I said, they just continued to pour into me, and I think at that point I just realized that it's more important for me to be a really good listener. Listen, take advice, take the coaching. And then, at some point it clicked that it was, and this was right around the same time when we were talking about purpose that I was walking you through earlier. It becomes, it has to transition to, it's about the teammate, and it's no longer about me, right? What gives me joy each day is when I can talk to the leadership, talk to the teams in the field, and see their development, and see that look in their eye as they're kind of starting their journey. And I think that's, for me, that's what really had to trigger. Is like, look, it's, yes, we all want to continue to grow in our careers, and continue to grow as leaders, but at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's not about me personally. It's about the team, and that's the mindset kind of shift, that when I made that, things just kind of continue to move and to happen. But it's never sought after. It's just, look, if I wake up every day, I focus on our first value, core value, which is we do the right thing. You keep that as your true north. Focus on your purpose, and then you quickly realize it has nothing to do with me. And as long as I'm focused on supporting and making the team better, the rest takes care of itself.
I'm going to ask us to break out all the tools at our disposal here. We've already used the time machine and gone back to talk to those
Yeah, we got
detractors.
to go back to that. If you have that, I'd like to go back further if we can. Maybe
I love it. Well, and we've sort of touched on so many of the changes within our industry, both from a company and scalability perspective, a technology and a vehicle perspective. I think throughout your career, the amount of change that you have seen, you would probably describe as just insane and unpredictable. In the spirit of that, though, I'm going to ask us to take that time machine forward a little bit, and at a broad scale over the next 5 to 10 years, what do you see changing in our industry?
So that's a tough one. I mean, if you've been in this, I think most industries, but certainly this one over the last 3 or 4 years, it seems that every year you look up, there's a new challenge that's presented. But look, I think you're going to continue to see vehicle complexity increase. I think that's the easy answer. I think you're going to see that in, kind of the technology space with these kind of rolling computers, and you're going to continue to see it in the advanced materials space, right? So it's the materials that are used to build these cars are going to continue to change, and it's going to be on us. I mean, it's going to be incredibly important to make sure we stay trained, we are able to identify those type of vehicles. But look, I think vehicle complexity is, I would say, number one on my radar as far as what's coming. I think the technician shortage and the things that we've talked a little bit about already. Look, as I look in the future, I don't think that problem is going to be going away anytime soon. And so it's something, if there's something that keeps me up at night, it's, how can we make sure that whether it's through the TAP program or supporting other programs in the industry, how can we make sure that there's plenty of technicians to take care of the needs of our customers in the future. But again, I think, when you look at it, the technology piece of it is going to be the complexity in the repairs is going to be what's coming. I think you may see some shifts and I think there's going to be some technology gains from a estimatic standpoint, making the lives of the folks in the front office. I see us, that job not getting easier, because that is a very difficult job. But I think that's an area where you'll see kind of some of the kind of technology that we're seeing across the world really start to play a role. And so you'll see the front office dynamic shift a bit. I think you're going to see the complexity of the vehicles change, and boy, who knows what else. I mean, I guess we just have to wait and see what the rest of 24 and 25 has for us. But and to clarify, when I talk about the front office, it's about leveraging technology, right? So everybody likes to talk about AI, right? That's the buzzword. You can't get on any type of show, any type of thing without talking about somebody bringing up AI. I'm not convinced anybody really knows, a whole lot what to do with it yet. I know it's going to continue to develop. But one of the cool things that, that we've got for our service advisors is a way that we can use AI to give them the answers that they need kind of when they need it, in a way that, the generation today and how we learn and how we all are, using, we're used to 20-second TikToks, and those kind of things. But finding different ways to use technology to help us get the information to the teammates when they need it. Because again, to expect a service advisor to remember every repair procedure around the technology, calibrations, the different advanced materials, all of those things are just incredibly complex, and we've got to find a way to get them the information they need when they need it. So we've got a pretty cool tool. I'm not going to share any more, Cole. You'd have to come work with us to get the answer to it, but I can tell you it's a game changer.
Awesome. Very cool. Now I want to zoom back in with the same question. Talk to me about what the future of Caliber looks like over that next same time frame, as well as, tell me how you guys are going to keep the momentum going. You've set a very challenging record to keep up and beat.
No doubt. That's a tough one, Cole. I'll do my best. I think when you look at the next 5-10 years for Caliber, look, our purpose is going to remain the same. We're going to be focused on restoring the rhythm of your life. And I think that's just going to continue to expand. You mentioned earlier, you have our glass business and our glass teammates that we're beginning to ramp up. When you talk about Caliber fleet, you see a large opportunity in front of us there. So what I see is work is going to continue to come in, but I believe it's going to be coming in from multiple different channels, and we have to be ready to answer that call, right? Whether it's BEVs, luxury strategy, through fleet, through glass, our partnership with ProTech Electronics, they partnering with ProTech gives us that line of sight to some of the new technology that's coming down the line to us, so we can try and be in front of it and make sure our teammates are trained and ready to handle it. But I think it's kind of more the same as far as we're going to be repairing cars and restoring customers, but the channels and the way that we do that, I do see changing over the next 5-6 years.
Fantastic. Now, I have one last question for you before we get to our 3 key takeaways and starting to wrap up. But first, I want to dial in and paint one last picture for the audience. Currently, as COO, I guess you could say you're responsible for 1,700 plus stores. How many stores were you responsible for as EVP? And then I guess, generally kind of throughout your career, how many stores have you been directly responsible for at different levels?
So certainly the 1,700, almost 1,800 now is the largest book. As an EVP, so don't look at store count necessarily as much, but I believe it was in the 300 to 400 centers
Awesome.
that I had the opportunity to work with. And then again, as you go down, through the levels, obviously that began to shrink.
Sure.
But for us, like we can build buildings, we can, make shops, but for me, it's the 34,000 and growing teammates that we have, that when I look at when I wake up, I don't think of the 1,700 stores. I'm like, no, there's 34,000 teammates counting on me and the leadership team here to support them and continue the business growing. Like you said, the momentum is going to come from the teammates, right? That we have to continue to create opportunities for them to grow, to advance their careers, just so they can better, be more productive and in the society and just, continue to grow themselves personally. So
Sure.
that's where the momentum is going to come from. We just have to make sure we're good stewards of the business to make sure that we're prepared to continue to fuel that growth for them.
Fantastic. Well, and I paint that picture to say, and I think we can say it very clearly as COO of the biggest organization in our industry, you are the guest we're talking to right now who has been responsible for the most people, the most store counts. And so I think the answer to this question is going to be very telling. As you know, a lot of our listener base is ownership within single store operations, small regional operations. What advice would you give to independent shop owners who are looking to grow and to innovate kind of in the vein of Caliber at a much smaller scale in today's market?
Yeah, I would, it's a great question. I would say you have to be disciplined in focusing on your people. And yes, that's leaders, that's the office, but you really have to take that time and that same energy in with your technicians. These men and women, they're in the back of the shop, fixing these cars, and that they really drive the business. Without them, none of us are here, right? So it's not losing sight of the importance of the technicians in the field and kind of what ultimately drives the business. And I would say that's through, making sure they have the right tools and equipment, which, that's going to continue to be tougher and tougher. Like, it is not a cheap venture to get out and start looking at BEV training and the equipment required to repair some of these complex cars. But they have to, making sure they have the tools to do a proper, quality repair, and then the training on that side of it. So for me, you have to really be focused on the people piece of it. And then, future proofing is kind of what I would say. And it's not three things, but it's a couple, but you've got to focus on the people and make sure not losing touch with your team, but then future proofing the business. That for me, that goes to, training really across your office and in the back. You can't assume that, that how we've done things in the past and the 2020 Corolla looks a lot like a 23, but guess what? They have different substrates, right? Their materials are different. We have to really lean in there to make sure that, we have a good beat on the business. But I would say investment in your people, making sure you have an equal focus on the technician, providing them the support and tools and training that they need. And then, being ready with what's coming, making sure you're ready to repair these complex cars that are heading your way.
Fantastic. Great advice for any owners or operators out in the space, and could not agree more. Todd, normally at this point of the show, I would ask, where can people follow along with your organization and all that stuff? I think it would probably behoove all of us to say, I'm going to put a few links in the show notes rather than have you put everything out there. But if people did want to follow along with you, get in touch with you. Are you active on any socials or any information you can share there?
Yep, I'm on LinkedIn. I think it'll be the best place.
Fantastic. I'll include that link as well. Todd Dillender, you have been very generous with your time today. I think it was a fantastic conversation and want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Collision Vision.
Oh, Cole, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you again to Todd Dillender, COO of Caliber Collision, for joining us on today's show, the final episode of the MSO Chronicles series. I enjoyed Todd's tremendous passion for the industry and his great insights, and I hope you did as well. I wanted to touch on Todd's 3 key takeaways one more time before we part ways. And those were, number 1, focus on and invest in your people. Number 2, make sure there is a true focus on the technicians within your organization and provide them the support they need to be safe themselves and to ensure safe repairs for your customers. Lastly, future-proof your operation. Be ready to train appropriately. Be ready to invest in the right tools and invest in the right equipment. This is only getting to be a more complex industry, and that trend is not going anywhere anytime soon. As mentioned at the top of the show, while we may be saying goodbye to the MSO Chronicles series, we're saying hello to our very next series beginning next week, titled Operational Excellence: Shop Strategies for Success. Looking forward to a great series there. That's all for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of the Collision Vision, please be sure to give us a follow wherever you enjoy your podcast, or on YouTube, where the Collision Vision lives in video form. And go ahead and give the Collision Vision a share with your network as well. As always, on behalf of the Auto Body News team and myself, thank you for coming along for the ride.